Totally, yeah. And speaking of Dondozo, we're going to be featuring it in this matchup as well. It was about time.
It was about time.
It's, you know, it's funny because I'd say like Dondozo's back, but Dondozo has been back. Like, it just got top 8 at the World Championships and like multiple players top cut with it at Worlds. It just turns out like even in a format with restricted Pokemon, it can still thrive. Now that those restricted Pokemon, Urshifu, no longer around, it even has more room to operate with, kind of like in the beginning of Scarlet and Violet. And so curious to see how it comes out in this matchup. There's also a really fun Pokemon here in Clefable, which is, I think, one of the biggest winners of this regulation.
Oh, yeah.
People have been using Clefable a lot, and you might be wondering, well, why use Clefable over, say, Clefairy, which was actually, Clefairy was very good in the previous regulation with restricted Pokemon. But the reason is that Clefable gets access to Unaware, which is a really nice ability in, of course, ignoring those stat boosts from your opponents, right? And so Unaware obviously has redirection support, has Helping Hand, but you also can actually do meaningful damage with Moonblast. Clefairy is one of those Pokemon where you often just won't run any attacking moves, and that works when your partner is a really powerful restricted Pokemon. But now that the power levels decrease a little bit, Moonblast is actually really valuable from Clefable, so the combination of Unaware plus Moonblast is actually very good on this Pokemon. And of course, the classic Follow Me as well.
Yeah, and you can give it a defensive Terra, which makes it even better against something like the Dondozo, so you ignore all the Dondozo boosts. But even just looking at that Fairy typing, really great check, too. The King Gambit that has Sword Stance as well as 2 Dark-type attacks. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case here for this King Gambit. It does have access to Iron Head, so not necessarily the best typing to have against a Fairy type. But, you know, you still have a lot of other great options, I think, to deal with something like that Clefairy or even where that Clefable can kind of come into play. But the rest of the team, I mean, Aaron, you called out some very interesting Pokemon choices. Cinderace, Hariyama, Electabuzz.
Everything on this team is awesome. There's not a single Protect on any Pokemon. And to your point, yeah, normally, you know, with the non-Iron Head King Gambit variants, Clefable, it's like, oh, enjoy using your Dark-type attacks, but Matt's like, I don't need Protect on anything, right? Sometimes you'll see Protect over Iron Head.
Yeah.
Matt's like, I'm just going to use moves on everything. This Sinistcha, by the way, it's a Calm Mindset. Calm Mind Strength Sap Matcha Gotcha is actually disgusting against Dondozo because you can just keep going for the Strength Sap, decreasing Dondozo's attack, and healing back up. So I actually think the Sinistcha will be really interesting. Does Ofomezie even bring Dondozo into this matchup because there is this one Pokemon that can give it so much trouble, not to mention Electabuzz, not to mention Hariyama? That's not an Iron Hands. Iron Hands no longer exists, but Matt says, you know what? I've got something similar in Hariyama.
And the Guts boost as well, holding the Flame Orb, so definitely a way that you can dish out damage. Matt, by the way, for Pittsburgh 2023, ended up bringing a team including Armarouge and Namorous, Brute Bonnet, Slowbro, and Tinkaton. Just to give you an idea of maybe some of the Pokemon that he likes to use, maybe not so much of a surprise that Matt has such a creative team. But on the other side of things, Ofomezie does have that Clefable that we were talking about, so you can see the Unaware. It's got safety goggles as well, one way to keep it safe from any of those spores coming through from Mamungus, but you also have next to it the Annihilate the King Gambit, 2 Pokemon that don't necessarily have setup in this case, but still would love to have that redirection support while they end up going for some of their more powerful moves.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is look at the number of physical attackers here. Dondozo, Dragonite, King Gambit, Annihilate. Those can all be pretty spooky. I think the Sinistcha is going to be really important in this matchup. Now, the way you deal with Sinistcha is going to be the King Gambit, right? Because King Gambit can just threaten it with super effective damage with that Kowtow Cleave, and Sinistcha's Terra here is Fairy, and so if you go for that Fairy Terra, you still get hit by that super effective Iron Head. But I think when you play with Dondozo, the first question you ask yourself is, well, can I just like combine a Dondozo immediately and just start sweeping? And the answer, honestly, in this matchup is no. You're staring down this Sinistcha, and that set alone can give a lot of trouble. So I think King Gambit's going to be a really important matchup, Pokemon in this matchup. The Annihilate is really interesting, right? You can lead it with any of your physical attackers and actually go for coaching immediately and give yourself an attack boost, or just immediately snipe something off with that final Gambit. Matt's team notably does not have Protect on anything, right? So you are very vulnerable to those final Gambits.
It does mean that you have to give up a piece, right? Like, it's got kind of a really weird call to have to make with something like Final Gambit, because you only get a chance to do that once, and then you're down to just 3 Pokemon. But I can see a world maybe you help to use the Annihilate to get something else in, but I am very curious as well whether or not we even see the Dondozo and the Tatsugiri in this matchup. Because, you know, while the Dondozo has 3 attacking moves, like as Wave Crash, Earthquake, and Order Up, you have to be able to position those in a way that's going to make a lot of sense. So as we get into this game number 1 between Matt and Ofomezie, we do see the Dragonite and Annihilate here for Mezi, as well as the Sinistra and Hariyama for Matt.
Yeah, so Sinistra's hit the field. Hariyama, though, in an awkward spot. It's got that fake out, but you're up against the Inner Focus Dragonite and the Annihilate, which is Ghost Terra, or not Ghost Terra, Ghost typing. So you won't be able to actually click fake out and flinch either slot, which is really tough, because one thing that Ofomezie can go for is you can Final Gambit, or you could just go for coaching immediately onto the Dragonite, and then Dragonite can go for a super effective, for example, Ice Spinner into the Sinistra slot. So you can see Matt considering the swap in there to potentially take that. And yeah, knockoff here will be able to at least remove an item, but it's a really good lead by Ofomezie to block fake out being able to flinch on turn 1.
It's going to force Matt into this position where it's going to be the King Gambit now taking the field instead of that Sinistra. So it's able to come back in and maybe get something else off a little bit later, but notably is heat proof. It's actually not going to end up being able to give any hospitality healing over, which is what we can typically see on a Pokemon like that. And Ofomezie is going to go ahead and put the foot on the gas. It is the Terra Flying Dragonite to go for something like a Terra Flying Terra Blast.
Yeah, Terra Blast here just so strong. With the Assault Vest set, being able to switch her moves is so valuable as well. So there it is. Terra Blast coming out. Does it go into Sinistra? It does not. So Hariyama is just going to eat that up. That's a one-hit knockout immediately. And I think Ofomezie with the perfect lead and perfect turn 1. And there was honestly very little Matt could do to counter that. And I mean, Sinistra's just coming back out, but you could just go for another coaching right now.
And I don't even think a defensive Terra into the Fairy type would be enough to save it. It's not necessarily too safe in the face of these Pokemon. King Gambit does technically have an opportunity here to be able to get the better of something like the Dragonite, or at least get some damage down. So we are actually going to see this Terra Fairy onto the Sinistra, just hoping that it's going to be able to stick around.
Yeah, let's see if it's defensive enough. I mean, this Dragonite at least does not have something like Choice Band, and so Sinistra often is very, very bulky, but it's very free to just go for a second coaching here onto the Dragonite. A Dragonite, of course, could launch a super effective attack into the King Gambit, but will just offer the safe Terra Blast and wants to deny Trick Room. So can Sinistra survive right now? Let's see. It is able to survive. Okay.
That's a really big deal. It's going to give a little bit of breathing room for Matt's King Gambit to actually get a Sword Stance up as well. But notably, kind of a secondary effect of coaching is the fact that this Dragonite now also has +2 to its defenses.
Yeah, so you can just go for an extreme speed here potentially to finish off the Sinistra. You can see the strengths app there. If you don't go for extreme speed and you opt for something like Stomping Tantrum instead, then Sinistra can heal against the Dragonite and decrease your attack. So I think extreme speed here probably relatively safe to launch into Sinistra. Once again, Matt doesn't have Protect on any Pokemon on his team, right? So it was a big turn to get the Sword Stance off. The Annihilate now caught into an awkward spot, but and it's kind of forced to switch. But Dragonite's just looking so powerful right now.
Oh, it is going to be King Gambit as well. So you can look across the way at its counterpart. And this King Gambit does not have Sword Stance here for Mezi, but you can see this extreme speed, the perfect counter for this Sinistra, just not being able to actually get those moves off. Matt, just like that, down to the final 2 Pokemon in this first game.
Yeah, so the Kowtow Cleave here, boosted at +2, does okay damage in a Dragonite, but you're still down so much, right? And once again, the scary thing here is there's no Protect, right? And so, for example, the Dragonite can just launch Extreme Speed into Primarina. And then one of the things I'm curious about is the King Gambit versus Primarina speed interaction here, right? And there's a chance that King Gambit on the opposing side is actually faster than Primarina under Trick Room. So you can definitely Extreme Speed into the Primarina. You can also consider with Dragonite saying, you know what? I think you're not actually going to knock me out. You're scared of my King Gambit. You can go for a Stomping Tantrum on a Gambit. It is, you know, if Matt is actually able to pick up like 2 quick knockouts, like Annihilate is awkward, right? Trick Room is up, it's just gonna get demolished if it comes out before Trick Room expires, but I think this is a really key turn. Is Matt able to survive with both Pokemon right now?
Which is tough because, like, on the one hand, you do have the +2 to your defenses on Dragonite, but it's going to be the extreme speed into the Primarina. But is it going to be the King Gambit that gets a chance to move first? Kowtow to the Dragonite is not enough to actually pick it off.
Yeah,
but
it's slower.
King Gambit's Iron Head is going to finish off this Primarina before it even gets a chance to move.
Yeah, exactly. And so once again, with like no ability to protect anything, it's very easy to just double up onto slots here. So even though Trick Room was set up, Ofomezie bringing out that King Gambit at the perfect time, playing it super well. I think just great to realize, wow, this Sinistra completely counters my Dondozo, so I don't think I should bring it out. Like, I'm just going to rely on all the other Pokemon on my team. And so just going for, you know, the not very effective attacks, but King Gambit's still under 50% at this point.
Yeah, the crit 2 is going to definitely help as well. You see at the +2, it's going to do a meaningful amount of damage to Mezzy's King Gambit, but you still have to contend with this Dragonite. They can go for extreme speed, so you cannot Sucker Punch that Pokemon, and it should just be a matter of time before we do see Mezzy pick up this first game.
Yeah, I think the lead just gave Matt such a tough position to claw out of. The identification of Annihilate plus Dragonite was just really, really smart, realizing, hey, like, I can just get free coaching boosts right now, right? And the Sinistra, like the flying Terra Blast is also just so consistent across the board here. I think like we saw Assault Vest Dragonite in the previous round. It is in a really good spot in the format right now. Normally people like using that Choice Band, but with Choice Band you have to commit to locking into an attack. With that Assault Vest you have the flexibility of switching moves, which is really nice. And so that lead in itself I think is just really scary. Now one of the things you can do if you're Matt is say, well, okay, I don't think Sinistra was actually that good in this matchup because you didn't bring Dondozo, so let me drop it. And then Mezzy could actually end up bringing Dondozo, which would be wild. But I think the Annihilate combos are just really scary. So I think if you're Matt, you have to go back to the drawing board and say, I need a lead that pressures Annihilate plus any physical attacker a little bit more.
What's really nice, because even if you lead something like the King Gambit, because you go, oh, well, why don't I just like Sucker Punch that slot? Well, coaching is not an attack, so you can't use it against that. And similarly, you also just kind of still, maybe like Mezzy can play around that and go, well, maybe I just close combat you instead.
Yeah, I think the answer if you're Matt is the Electabuzz. Electabuzz here can go for Follow
That would
Me
be awesome.
to obviously redirect coaching away. You can also go for Ghost Terra if you think Final Gambit's going to hit you. So let's say you were trying to counter the exact lead that you just saw from the previous game. I think Electabuzz plus Primarina specifically would be really nice because you can go for Follow Me. Primarina could just go for Choice Specs Dazzling Gleam, which does so much damage immediately. I think, yeah, Hariyama Sinistro is basically such a tough combination into specifically Dragonite plus the Annihilate, right? And this is one thing that's really valuable in this format. Like, Fake Out is fairly common, normally from Pokemon like Incineroar or Rillaboom, but if you have a Ghost type, if you have Ghost Terra, if you have Covert Cloak, you have Inner Focus, there are a lot of ways to mitigate Fake Out actually being able to flinch on turn one, and Mezzy found that lead combination. And so, yeah, I'm curious if Mezzy decides to go with the same. I think for Matt, if you do want to mix it up, yeah, I'm looking at Electabuzz being brought out, and either something like Electabuzz Primarina, or you could even go like Electabuzz Sinistra to set up that Trick Room, and then go from there.
Yeah, I like that Electabuzz also has Taunt and Eerie Impulse, so two just really good supportive options to have next to something like the Primarina. I think you would love to have the Eerie Impulse just to make sure that something is going to take more damage. And the Taunt as well, if you end up seeing something like Clefable, for example. No more Helping Hand, no more Follow Me. Just some really nice ways to be able to protect that partner. But yeah, Electabuzz most notably here, for those of you that might have missed the team sheet, it is Vital Spirit, which doesn't necessarily help in Mezzy's matchup here, but it is just notably not actually static.
Yeah, I think I'd be surprised if it got left out for this game, honestly, because I think like when you're using no protect on anything, and it's the same lead here, so let's see, is it the Primarina? The Primarina is led here. It's not going to be the Electabuzz though, so this is still kind of scary, right? Because you are still threatening the turn one coaching into Terra Blast, but Sinistra could Terra. Primarina might be bulky enough to survive the +1 Terra Blast as well. You do have to worry about Final Gambit just coming out immediately here as well, right? So, but, you know, I like the Primarina lead. I think Hariyama just had no offensive pressure whatsoever. I'm curious still if Electabuzz is in the back, but yeah, you know, when I was suggesting Primarina plus Electabuzz, the idea is that Primarina at least exerts so much offensive pressure right now against both of these.
Yeah, well, it's got to be a Terra commit here. Otherwise, you are in danger versus this Dragonite, and you are also not going to feel too great about having to take something even like a U-turn from Annihilate. So it is going to be the Terastallization for this Sinistra at the very least.
Let's see, I think just not bringing Hariyama as a lead and leading Primarina this time already makes this a much stronger field state for Matt. Turn one is still scary, right? Annihilate has a lot of options. There's that U-turn you mentioned, there's Final Gambit, there's coaching. So we're gonna see both players trade Terra, and it feels pretty necessary here. I think from Mezzy's spot, you don't 100% need it just because you've got the Assault Vest, but going for that Terra, of course, now enables you to go for that Terra Blast.
Yeah, and we saw, though, that it wasn't necessarily a one-hit knockout onto the Sinistra, especially when it did end up having a coaching boost. So this Sinistra should be relatively safe this time around.
Yeah.
not too bad to have. Maybe you can actually go for something like a Matcha Gotcha and try to get the burn here. But the Terra Blast into this Primarina is just a one-hit knockout. This Primarina was not so bulky after all.
Yeah, I was really curious about that. I wonder if it was a damage roll, but Primarina is such an important offensive option in this, and so losing that is definitely tough because look, it's 2 physical attackers in the back. Yeah, no Electabuzz once again, and so King Gambit comes out now. The Annihilate caught into an awkward spot, but Dragonite's still threatening with so much damage, right? You do have the Strength Sap to at least decrease the damage output of Dragonite, but and the Dragonite here, its moveset is Extreme Speed, Ice Spin, or Terra Blast Stopping Tantrum, so there's no low kick at least. But this is still really scary, right? Because how are you going to deal enough damage to that Dragonite? It already has that defense boost. So Primarina, I think, being such a pivotal Pokemon here, exerts some pressure away, but I think Electabuzz Sinistra would have been able to maybe set up Trick Room, and then you have Primarina in the back. So let's see. I think, yeah, Matt's at least got to start going for some Sword Stances. At least you know the Annihilate slot on the opposing side can't really do too much other than go for another coaching.
Hoping for the burns onto both of these Pokemon.
Oh!
And there's no burn! Oh, no!
No burn comes out, and this Dragonite is free to just launch Stomping Tantrum, +1 attack into King Gambit. It's going to deal super effective damage here, and coaching just comes out once again. And so now this Dragonite at +2 defense. There's no redirection from this Sinistra as well. It's a really, really difficult spot, especially because, of course, this Sinistra can't even deal damage into the Dragonite. So, I mean, that turn 1 survival or knockout was huge, right? If you get the survival there, then you at least get damage off. So, Annihilate's finally going to pivot out and say, you know what? I have coached my Dragonite enough. I think it's ready to fight the battle. Clefable comes out here as well. Matcha Gotcha is going to come out. You're still looking for that burn, but to be honest, even with the burn, I'm not sure it's going to be enough here. So let's see.
It's no burn either. I mean, the King Gambit still gets a chance to move. No extreme speed coming out from this Dragonite, but it's going to be the Stomping Tantrum just to finish the job. That burn would have been critical to have 2 turns ago, but now you get this Clefable on the field next to this Dragonite, so even if you are able to launch any attacks, Clefable gets to follow meet them away.
Yeah, and the Hariyama just hits the field, but Flying Terra Blast is just so strong into this team composition. There's the Matcha Gotcha, there's a Strange Slap. This is inner focus Dragonite, so you can't even flinch it with a Fake Out here, so it's pretty free to just launch a Terra Blast into the Hariyama slot right now, I think. Clefable can just go for something like Follow Me plus Terra Blast here, I think relatively safe. So you're hoping for the burn here, and yeah, you can see Matt deciding, you know what, I might as well try to just knock out Clefable with the Heavy Slam here, or maybe hope that there's a mistake on the opposing side. Clefable protects for some reason, and you get the knockout with Heavy Slam onto Dragonite, so I like the target there, but Follow Me here, always really safe. Unfortunately, Sinistra not be able to get those burns made this game so much more difficult.
Well, the Heavy Slam first, still not enough to knock out this Clefable, but the Matcha Gotcha maybe this time around, can you actually get the burn? Would that be enough to save your Hariyama?
You need it right now, but it doesn't look like it.
Oh, this Dragonite has just been able to get KO after KO in these sets. Terra Blast into the Hariyama was enough that first time around, and it's going to be enough for the second.
Oh, this poor Sinistra tried so hard, but wasn't able to get a burn a single time. A burn at any point would have been really crucial, right? Because it just drastically decreases the damage output of the Dragonite. And yeah, I think the thing here is basically the Sinistra set really clever in dealing with Dondozo. Mezzi recognizes it's just too good into Dondozo. It's a bait to bring Dondozo, right? Like, Matt really wants Dondozo to come out, and Sinistra, while was able to set up Trick Room, like, there just wasn't enough damage on the opposing side, and yeah, like, the Annihilate lead was just so scary when paired with Dragonite. Extreme Speed just does so much. Matcha Gotcha, even a miss here.
No.
Dragonite said, I am not getting burnt by you today. Chips away at the King Gambit.
King Gambit doesn't even get burned either.
Healing, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, the Iron Head plenty into this Terra Fairy. Matcha tried its best. This wasn't the right cup of tea this time around.
Yeah, I mean, the Annihilate plus the Dragonite combination was just a little bit too much here, and I think Choice Scarf for Annihilate is really cool, right? Because normally you're using it just for that final gambit, but coaching just unlocks so many more options. And in this game, it was so relevant not only for the attack boost, but also the defense boost. Being able to survive these physical attacks from the opposing side was a really big deal. So yeah, I think like Matt had some other options that he could have maybe explored in that, especially if you're expecting the same lead, right? So like Electabuzz was something that I wanted to see. I thought Electabuzz Primarina is interesting because you can at least redirect coaching and you essentially force the Annihilate to either go for Final Gambit or U-turn. But if you go for Final Gambit, you can trade Electabuzz for Annihilate, but then Dragonite's not getting that one-hit knockout onto the Primarina, and it might feel forced to go for that Flying Terra. So then suddenly you're trading 1-for-1, maybe half your, or more than half your health, but for considerable damage on the opposing side, and then you can maybe get the free switch into, say, your Sinistcha or the Hariyama. I think,
and then Terra from there.
Exactly, yeah. But I think the reality is, +1 Terra Blast into Primarina. Like, I would love to know how the Primarina is trained here, because I was thinking there's an okay chance maybe it survives that, and if it survives, that game I think also is completely different because you get the damage you need onto the Dragonite.
Right, yeah, and then maybe even just a couple more chances to get the Matcha Gotcha burns. It is kind of wild to me that it didn't burn anything.
Yeah.
Like 3 times into the Dragonite, it missed into the Dragonite once, and didn't even get it onto the King Gambit either. But I just think about, like, had the burn come through, then Hariyama also doesn't go down there, gets a chance to actually use a close combat into the King Gambit since it also can't tear away.
Yeah.
And then that game 2 even just looks different from there.
100%, yeah. I think it was tough because it's like you had to deal with the pressure of Dragonite, and then like the speed interactions were kind of awkward, right? I think like Messi switching in both of those games was flawless. I think he played basically a perfect set. Never really made any mistakes and was always making the right switch at the right time, right? Staying in with the Annihilate when Trigger was set up and then switching out, bringing in King Gambit in that first game to threaten the Primarina slot, bringing in Clefable for that follow me pressure in game 2, just masterfully done, and taking advantage of the fact that Matt just did not have Protect, right? And so, yeah, I keep talking about Electabuzz. I think that could have been a Pokemon that maybe at least could have made a little bit of a difference, but I think like Mezzy was one step ahead just from team preview alone, right? Recognizing, hey, like you've got this fake out potential, but if I just lead with Annihilate and Dragonite, fake out is useless. Recognizing Terra Blast and Dragonite in general is really strong, and then also deciding to not bring Dondozo. This game looks really different if Dondozo like actually hits the field and it combines with Tatsugiri, and then it actually just like does nothing, and then Sin is just like happy to just stay on the field and slowly whittle away at it.
Then you definitely get the burn.
Exactly,
I'm just thinking in my head, it's like, you know, if it's Dondozo, you always get the burn.
Yeah, like there's no way you're going to make it out without the, and like you're eating up all the strength stat boosts as well. If you're looking for specifically a Dondozo counter, this Sinistcha is actually really good. Now, Mezzy's team is very well constructed because if you're using Dondozo, you don't want to rely on it all the time, right? Flexible teams are really important, especially in best of 3. And when you rely on the same strategy over and over again, it's something that your opponents can take advantage of. So this is great team building from Mezzy's side because essentially it's saying, well, okay, I'm going to bait you into bringing Sinistcha, and I'm not even going to bring the Pokemon that your Sinistcha is kind of designed to be, right? And so, but yeah, I think Assault Vest Dragonite has been looking pretty good. We've seen it on stream both rounds so far. It seems like a big winner in the early days of this regulation.
I think Choice Band is just so difficult because you have to lock into something. And I think because there's so many different answers, or maybe the meta is a bit more unpredictable, you don't want to necessarily lock into something that's just going to end up getting like a switch is going to get the better of you or something like that. So I love Assault Vest, particularly because of the versatility of being able to just change your move every other turn. So I think that's been great.
And I think the coaching makes all the difference there as well, honestly, right? Because it goes
For
from... normally the downside with Dragonite, if you're not running that Choice Band, is, oh, I'm actually not going to pick up any one-hit knockouts. Like, I maybe can get a lot of 2-hit KOs, but you saw the coaching just enable the Dragonite to snipe down the Primarina, right? It's like, here, have a Choice Band, basically, and a free defense boost. And so... there is counter to, coaching, right? And so, like, redirection is a start here. But, yeah, I think the Dragonite was just so well executed in this one. And honestly, even without the coaching boost, it's still really scary. Terra Blast plus Stomping Tantrum, still basically like 2-hit KOs everything on Matt's team. And Matt's team is still pretty bulky to begin with, right? But it's really fun to see Annihilate, which is normally being used as a Final Gambit user, just safely go for the coaching and enable its partners.
It's been a fun evolution to watch, especially when you know that Annihilate can also be built in a couple of different ways, like Beat Up, Rage Fist, but that's not how Mezzy was able to get the job done. It was all about that coaching Annihilate. Let's go ahead and head over to the lounge as well, as we've got an interview with him to break down that match.
Thank you so much, Rose and Aaron. I am currently joined in the lounge with Swiss Round 3 winner, Mezier. Mezier, tell me about how you're feeling right now.
I'm feeling good. I really like this team. It is very fun.
Can you tell us a little bit more about going into this matchup and kind of like what tools you had for the tools that your team had to go into this matchup?
So I saw on his team he had Primarina, he had Sinistcha, and he also had guts on the Hariyama, so I could tell like he was very well versed into how to beat Dondozo, especially because the Sinistra had a strength sap. So I knew that if I brought Dondozo at all, or at least let it, there was nothing it was going to be able to do, because he would just set Trick Room, and then he would start hitting me with like choice specs, Primarina. It's going to do enough damage. He even had Eerie Impulse on the Electabuzz. I was like, he knows how to beat Dondozo, so I'm not doing that. But his team was a balanced team of like Fire, Water, Grass, and did not have a way to hit Dragonite that wasn't Primarina. So I already know that like +1 Dragonite, Terra Blast, hit KOs Primarina, unless they have like a ridiculous amount of defensive bulk. So I basically just was like, no matter what you start, I'm Terra Blasting immediately. Like, I'm not bringing Dondozo.
Just going straight onto the offensive with that Choice Scarf Annihilate coaching, getting that Dragonite, that boost. That's such a like fun way to see how it's played, and picked up that one-hit KO from Primarina.
Yeah.
You were absolutely correct.
And it's fake out immune. So Hariyama, I figured that his natural lead would be Hariyama Sinistra, and I was like, go ahead, press fake out.
So we talked a little bit about this earlier when Aaron and Rose were breaking down the team, but this is kind of a team that you and your friends worked on together, and this is a team that you think is a very great team. Can you tell us a little bit more about the team building process?
Yeah, so like a couple of friends from New Jersey just told me, oh, I think I found a team that broke the format, and I was like, what? Okay, like let me see this. And I started looking at it, and like I started to see the vision, and I was like, yeah, coaching Annihilate next to Dondozo or next to another Defiant Mon is so good, because like if you have like it next to a Mon that can protect, it can protect coaching. And if you have a Mon that is Dragonite that's immune to fake out, you could just coaching and then immediately start hitting stuff. And there are a lot of times where like you can get Dondozo to like +2 or 3 before you even combine with Tatsugiri.
Yeah. So it seems like that you see the vision here. You see where this team can go. Do you think this team has what it takes to go all the way?
I think that this is one of the most well-rounded Dondozo teams I've ever seen. As you can see, if I don't bring Dondozo, it still does plenty fine.
Yeah.
So, but like the best case scenario would be that I can bring Dondozo, but sometimes you don't have to, because you just coach the things that, like, I don't have Swords Dance on my King Gambit because I don't need it.
Right.
I don't have Choice Band on my Dragonite because I don't need it.
Yeah.
So
why spend a turn for your Pokemon to set up when Annihilate can spend that turn helping it set up, right?
And then if I want to, I could just delete something with Final Gambit. You know?
Yeah, definitely different. There's a lot of different modes that you can go with this team. Mezie, we talked a little bit earlier too about how you've made it to the top 8 of a few regional championships before. What would it mean for you to win this regional championship here?
I mean, I started VGC last year, so like for me to be able to win a regional like now would be like, okay, like I actually like, because I always thought it was pretty good, but like I had like kind of like ups and downs with VGC. Like I'll top A1 regional, and then I'll go like 5-3, 6-3 at the next one. But for me to win it now would mean like the training that I've done to make myself a more well-rounded player actually pulled off, because I've been doing a lot of that in the past couple of months.
Well, it seems like you're off to a great start right now. Currently, what is it, 3-0?
3-0.
3-0 right now in this tournament, piloting a team that you're very comfortable with. You see the vision for it. Can I ask you one quick question? How do you feel so far about Regulation H?
I think Regulation is a breath of fresh air, because Regulation G had me sweating. Like every game had me sweating. So at least in Regulation 8, I feel like I can play more traditional Pokemon, in the sense of like, okay, there's Fire, Water, Grass, there's pivoting, I resist this hit, so therefore it will only do this amount of damage, as opposed to Miraidon clicking Electro Drift and killing me anyway, or KOing me anyway if it hits super effective. So I feel a lot more comfortable with
Gotcha.
Reg H.
That sounds great. It seems like it's a very fun format. I've heard nothing but great things about this format. I'm going to go ahead and let you go back and prepare for the next round. You have a lot more Swiss rounds to get ready for. But before I let you go, do you have any shout-outs that you want to make out to anybody watching?
The guys in the Apex server, Blake, Kaguya, Lorenzo, Joe, Arbin, Matt, everyone, Dylan, everyone in the Apex server that pulled me onto this. This is like one of the first times I've ever done like a collaborative effort on a team that I actually put a lot of effort into. So I actually am like super excited to keep going with this.
Thank you so much, Mezie. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you again. I'm going to go ahead and let you get ready for the next Swiss round. We're going to go ahead and throw to a break, but when we come back, more action here at the 2025 Pokemon Regional Championships in Baltimore.